Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. This episode is brought to you by my friends over at My Expat Taxes. For my fellow Americans out there, we all know tax season is upon us, and for anyone who's ever had the pleasure of dealing with multiple tax agencies in multiple countries, you know this can be a challenging experience. That's why when it comes to dealing with anything tax-related abroad, I always recommend hiring a pro to help you navigate this unknown space. In my experience, this not only saves you time and spares you from the unnecessary headaches, it also has literally saved me thousands of dollars in taxes over the years. So I am super excited to introduce you to My Expat Taxes, a true pro in this space that focuses 100% on U.S. expat taxes. Whether you're filing for 2023, catching up on back taxes, predicting a future tax obligation for a future move abroad, or just looking for some guidance, My Expat Taxes has your back with speedy and affordable online filing options and real human accountants to assist you as needed. Join the more than 16,000 other Americans living abroad who have used their services by visiting myexpattaxes.com via the link in the show notes. My guest today is a legend in the world of travel writing. He is the award-winning travel writer Tim Leffel, who is the author of The World's Cheapest Destinations, Travel Writing 2.0, and the Living Abroad book, A Better Life for Half the Price. All of those have been published in multiple editions, and on top of that, he somehow manages to run multiple travel websites and blogs that have all won multiple awards in and of themselves. So this was a lot of fun to get into one of the OGs of the travel writing game. Tim also lives abroad. He's originally from the U.S. and currently calls Mexico his home. But as we get into very early in this conversation, he loves the hub and spoke model of having a home base abroad, but spending significant time back in the U.S. and in other destinations around the world. We talk about the evolution of travel and travel writing and a lot of details on how you could call Mexico your home, amongst many other subjects. So this was an absolute blast for me, someone I've been following for a long time, and was very excited to get here on the show. I hope you all enjoy as much as I did. Please help me in welcoming Tim to About Abroad. I think the digital nomad, perpetual traveler lifestyle seems really sexy to a lot of people and sounds like a lot of fun in theory. But yeah, I mean, we all sort of crave like a sense of home and routine to some degree. You know, it's different for everyone, but I imagine even for someone like yourself that's seen a good portion of the world and lives outside their home country, but gets to travel a lot just for a living, you know, I would imagine there's some portion of that that's true for you as well.
Yeah, and I did spend a period of my life in my early backpacking days living out of one pack and traveling for a year at a time without landing anywhere. And that just gets tiring after a while. Not to mention you get sick of your clothes, but you do, you know, after a while you're like, man, I really would like to unpack for more than a few days. And also you make all these friendships that are very fleeting, you know, and you don't really, maybe you are on the same itinerary with somebody for a week or two, but then you don't see them again. And so it is nice to have a home base that you can return to where you know the city well and you've got a place where everything's your own. And, you know, most people that I know that have traveled nonstop for years on end, eventually they just kind of burn out and they either go slower, like spend 3 months at a time in each place, or they'll just finally get a home base and then kind of do the hub and spoke thing, which is what I do now. I have a base in Guanajuato, Mexico, but I will go away for 2 or 3 months at a time sometimes.
Where do you go to? Like, do you have your core, like home away from home bases as part of those spokes, or does it vary?
No, for that part, only for seeing family. I still have relatives in Tampa Bay and Virginia. So we go back there probably once a year at least. But otherwise, it's just wherever work takes me. Sometimes I get invited on a press trip or I'm going to a conference that's in a certain city and I'll just build travels around that. Last year, I spent 4 or 5 months in Europe, and it was because I just had a bunch of things lined up that kind of fell into place together. And then in between, we would just rent an apartment for a week or two, or we belonged to some home exchange programs and we did a bit of that. And so it's slow travel. I try not to be running around like a crazy person.
Yeah, I think the novelty wears off at some point. I mean, anybody that's been on this podcast or done the work that you've done has an affinity for seeing the world and kind of being on the move to some degree. But like, I think also just like slowing down, just experiencing the place, being there for a period of time, and like really getting into the weeds of living there is something that starts to call to you after a while. At least like that's been my evolution, I guess, if I could use that word. Like at one point I really loved traveling all the time. I couldn't get enough of it. And then it was like, okay, like 1 month at a time. And then that became like 3 months. And now I'm like, I just kind of want to like be put and have my home and do I like the hub and spoke model as you put it, from here on out.
Yeah. And you also can still work fairly easily if you do that too. Like if you're not trying to go a different place every day, then you've got, a lot more downtime in one place where you can get some work done. And then you can rent an apartment with a proper chair and a desk or
yeah,
room table, that you can work at. And then also you spend a lot less. I mean, I'm still at heart a budget traveler. I like to get a good value, and you get a lot better value if you stay somewhere for a month or 2 or 3 months, because you find out where the best restaurants are that are a good value. You learn what prices are so you can shop smartly and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think also like you don't feel the need to like rush and experience everything. Like, if you're there for like a couple days or a week or something, like maybe you opt for the taxi instead of the metro or something, because you're like, well, I've only got a little bit of time. I got to get there and check this thing off the list. And then, I think when you slow down, like you just get an overall better value and better experience.
Yeah, and you can dive a lot deeper if it's a city that does have a lot to see. We lived in Istanbul when I was younger, teaching English for about 5 months, and every single weekend, well, I guess it was really Wednesday and Thursday because we were off in the middle of the week, but we would go somewhere different every time within Istanbul or nearby, and we never ran out of things to see because there's so much in that city. But if you're coming in as a tourist for 2 or 3 days, then you're by nature only going to see the top sites usually.
Yeah, you're gonna go see those, and then like feel like you conquered Istanbul, and you saw the top three things on the travel list. That's I didn't know that part of your story, that you lived in Istanbul for a while. Are there other places, like, I mean, I know that there are, but like, what are some of the other places around the world that that you would kind of classify as like, yeah, I lived there for a period of time?
Well, I'm going to give a real abbreviated version, but we took that English teaching course in Bangkok, so we spent a month there. You can do it all over the world. The the best recognized TEFL certificate, they run it in a bunch of different places. It's from Cambridge, but so we did it in Bangkok because it was cheap to live there and fun. And then we taught in Istanbul and didn't make a lot of money, but we made enough to live on. So we were backpackers at the time. They gave us an apartment, so we were happy. And then later on a different trip, we signed a contract and taught English in Korea for more than a year. So that was a different experience. We actually socked away a lot of money doing that one because we were working constantly and we had private lessons on the side and all this stuff. And so that was a cool experience. Like, it's never a place that I would have gone and lived just as a regular traveler, but it was a great place to work and really dive into the culture and learn about the country. And of course, a lot of people do that in Japan too. I feel like half the travel writers of my generation out there did that because back then there weren't a lot of things you could do. I'm talking like the 90s that you could make money at if you were traveling, but teaching English was a good one. So a lot of people did that, or they were like dive masters at a scuba school or something like that. There were transferable skills, or you went the other end of the scale and you picked fruit, or you worked at a hostel or something like that.
These were the core jobs of the nomadic traveler at that time. And I mean, I don't think you're going to say this, so I want to say it for you. Like, I mean, you were one of the OGs of the travel writing game, like won countless awards, written numerous books, been published all over the place. Like, so for someone like myself, I'm I guess getting kind of like up there in the, I'm not a young 20 something, but I've been doing this for a bit of time and started reading people like yourself many, many years ago when I was first like, this whole job career thing is cool, but like there's a lot of world that I want to see. And my little study abroad experience in college didn't quite scratch that itch. So I'm going to need to figure out how to merge these. And I guess my only option is teaching English or working at a hostel. And that wasn't that long ago. Like today, I'm lucky. I feel like I'm fortunate. I've got a remote job and I can take my laptop with me and go scratch that itch as I want now. But I mean, that was the case like not that long ago. And yeah, you were at the forefront of that like very early on. So I guess you have a lot of perspective on like where it was and where it is today.
Yeah, and I've got a post on my blog that's something like 30 things that travelers couldn't do 30 years ago or something like that. Because it boggles people's mind to think about this, but there was no internet, So think how many things we depend on that are, related to the internet. There was no email when I first took off because I'm talking 93, 94. And, but the thing is that's funny about that is I have another article on my Perceptive Travel site that Kevin Kelly wrote, and he's my partner for the Nomadico newsletter. And he backpacked in the 70s. So he's like talking about carrying 40 rolls of film around with him. And, the fact that you had to take a stack of traveler's checks because there were no ATMs even. So I thought we had it hard, but then it's even more amazing to think about what it was like before that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny, like, again, because it wasn't really that long ago. So I think my first like extended period outside of the US was other than like I went to Australia for a month, then I went to college, and immediately upon going to college, I was like, I'm going into a study abroad program, did that. And so we're talking like early 2000s. And there were so many things that I think back on now. Like for a kid in college, I didn't have a laptop because you had desktops. So I didn't take a laptop with me. I didn't have a cell phone to take with me. Like we had phones, but they wasn't useful. So you had to go there and like buy a little digital one, but it wasn't, you had a SIM card, you had like 30 minutes a month. You weren't texting with your family back home. It was like emergencies. You had to use phone cards to call back to the US to talk to family and stuff. And so I lost my credit card, which was kind of like a cool thing to have. I lost my credit card my first day abroad and had to figure out how to get back in touch with, I had traveler's checks, had like, a couple €100 worth of traveler's checks that I could use. And that was it. And I had to figure out how to get a new credit card in Europe with no phone, no laptop, no internet. Like, internet existed, but I wasn't like I could get onto my bank's portal and have a credit card sent to me like that. That wasn't there. So anyway, it's just kind of wild. Like things have changed so quickly. And I feel like, especially with the growth of people, digital nomadism and remote work and stuff, like you just see people sort of just like walking right into this lifestyle fairly easily by comparison, which is kind of mind boggling.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how easy it is now. Just the simple fact that you can book things in advance online on your phone. You can book a room or you can book a bus ticket or a train ticket. Like before, you just had to show up to the bus station and figure out when it left. Like sometimes you were waiting around for 3 hours. Like, it's just it got rid of all the inefficiencies in the system. There were some advantages though to just showing up in a place and finding a room because you could look at the room first before you took it. So there was an advantage there, and you had some negotiating power, which you don't online. But yeah, for the most part, everything's 10 times easier than it used to be. And that doesn't mean it's easy. Like travel's still difficult, and you get a wrench in the works all the time, regardless. But there's just fewer things that you have to wing it on now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned that you, one of the things I'm really kind of fascinated about with your story is you're known as a travel writer, and, you've written many books and articles and such on the subject. And yet a key part of your story is the fact that like, not so much about the travel, but like the fact that you actually live abroad being from the US and you have a home base there in Mexico. And I know I don't know a whole lot about this side of your story. So maybe even for people that know you that are in my audience, like, can you tell us a little bit about that transition to Mexico, why you chose where you are, and anything kind of around that decision that made you end up there?
Sure. Well, we loved that experience of living abroad in a different place and experiencing a different culture. And we always kind of had it in the back of our mind that we were going to do that again. And we didn't want to wait till we were retired to get there. So basically, when my daughter was about 10, she had a traumatic conversation with us where we said, we're moving out of Nashville, Tennessee, which is where we lived at the time. We're moving to Mexico and we're never coming back here. And it's not that we moved to Mexico permanently at that point. We went back and forth from the States to Mexico off and on. But basically, we moved back to Tampa Bay after that when we moved to the States, because that's where my wife's mother lives. And so, we never went back to her childhood home except to visit. So that was not an easy conversation to have, but we knew she would adapt really quickly, and she did. And, kids learn another language a lot faster than us older adults do. So once she had some local friends, she learned really quickly. I mean, we did do some immersion work with her, put her in classes and stuff before, but, there's no substitute for actually living in a place and using the language every day. But anyway, we came down for a year, and then we went back to the U.S. for a couple of years. Then we came down here for 2 years, and then we went back for her to finish high school. And so I've been here full time since the end of 2018, but we were kind of, going back and forth. The reason we picked Mexico, I'm in a city called Guanajuato that I really like a lot. It's a hilly place. It's up in the mountains. It's at 6,500 feet in altitude. So the weather's really nice all year. It never gets super hot or super cold. The houses don't have heat or air conditioning, so our electric bill is next to nothing. But yeah, I like this climate a lot, and it's sunny most of the year, like 300 and some days a year. So that does wonders for your mood. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage City. It goes back to the 1500s. So, there's some really cool old architecture, and there's a lot of history here. So I like all those aspects of it. It's not too big. It's maybe 250,000 if you count the suburbs. So it kind of hits all the right notes for me. I think my wife would rather be on a hot beach somewhere if it was all up to her, but we do go to the beach a lot to make up for that. But there's a good airport here too, which is another important thing if you're a travel writer. There's some other places in Mexico I like a lot that just have crappy airports without many connections. So this one, we're near a big city that's actually the shoe capital of Mexico. And there's also some car plants around and things like that. So there's a lot of industry. So because of that, they have a lot of flights to different parts of the U.S. And then if we need to, we're about 4 or 5 hours away from Mexico City and about 3 from Guadalajara. So we have some other flight choices too for international options.
Nice. What made you choose Mexico? Like of all the country, was there an affinity for Mexico in particular, or any particular reason you decided to go there and kind of hone in on that?
I do like the food a lot and the culture and the history. And it's easier to live in a country that speaks Spanish than like Czech or Hungarian or something. But a lot of it, honestly, was just the time zone aspect and the connectivity aspect. Like, my wife and I both still have a mother in the U.S., and my dad was still alive at the time when I moved down here. So I wanted to be able to get back when I needed to. If you're in Thailand, first of all, it's almost impossible to have phone calls with people back in the States. You're just like on a completely opposite time zone, where you're having to do calls at 4 a.m. and stuff. And I didn't want to deal with that. And then I like Argentina a lot. I could definitely live there, but again, you're like an overnight flight away to get back to the U.S., and I'm still doing business. I still got family. So, yeah, I go and stay in places like that for a month or two, but it's easier to live in Mexico just from a logistics standpoint.
Yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. And being over, like I've spent some time living in Latin America, and now like have spent the last 6 years living in Europe, and that's one of the pains that I feel sometimes. Like, you have the time difference, of course, but that's manageable for at least for family being on the East Coast of the U.S. But the other, like getting back, like especially if you're not near a major airport, you might travel for 20 hours to get back to back home, and that can in a pinch can be a bit of a hassle. So, but I think it's kind of interesting. Like I'm always fascinated by like push pull factors, and like are you pushed somewhere? Are you pushed away from something, or are you pulled to something? And like in your case, it sounds like there were a lot of reasons to go to Mexico that made a lot of sense. But was there anything that kind of like was pushing you out of the U.S.? Like, did you desire to leave, or was it just like purely an adventure thing? Like, what do you think motivated you to start looking elsewhere? If there's anything aside from like just the pure adventure and joy of experiencing something new.
No, there are several factors, and I try not to rant too much about it in my Living Abroad book, but sometimes my left-leaning tendencies will show up and people criticize me in the reviews. But the U.S. healthcare system is a mess. Like objectively, if you just look at it from any angle, it's a terrible system. It's a for-profit system. It's expensive. It's not even that good. And so that's part of it. If you're self-employed, you end up spending like 20% of your income just on health insurance, which is nuts. And, just the cost in general of living in the U.S. when you look at housing and, just day-to-day groceries, any of that kind of stuff, it's more than double so many countries in the world. So, the cost factor was part of it. And just the 24-hour news cycle drives me crazy. Like, you can't get away from it. There's, TVs are on everywhere you go with the scroll going on and the news and like everything's such a battle politically, there's nobody wants to cooperate with each other anymore to get things done. And so, I just feel like that kind of wears you down mentally. And also the hustle culture, is nice for a while, but, you can't maintain that constantly. And I feel like it's such a workaholic culture in the US, and, you get swept up in that. And then you go somewhere like Mexico and you realize, hey, people are not that obsessed with work here. Like they get stuff done, I mean, it all gets done, but they're not in such a rush, and it's like family comes first and fun comes first, and I like that attitude.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. That was a breath of fresh air for me when I first stepped out of the hustle culture and realized that there was another way. I actually remember being in Austria and hanging out with a group of people from all over, probably let's say 8 or 10 different countries represented from around the world. And someone said, someone from Austria said, like, yeah, we just, I mentioned like, yeah, I think that, there's just this desire to be number one at everything when you're in the US. And this like really struck that person, is like, yeah, we just don't care about that. And my initial like natural reaction was like, well, if you're not trying to be number one, then what are you like, why play the game? But I disagree with that mentality now. I mean, it was just my, as a 20-year-old or whatever, that was naturally what was ingrained in me. And I think it's funny. Like it is a part of life, and living abroad has slowed that down for me. And it doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice everything professionally or not strive to be great at whatever it is you do or master your craft. Clearly you've been able to do that, and people can have successful careers slowing down just a bit. Like you don't have to go pedal to the metal 24/7, 365.
Yeah, they kind of made fun of that in that Talladega Nights movie. There was a line in there: "If you're not first, you're last."
Yeah.
At the very end, the father goes, "I never said that. That's stupid."
Yeah. You could be second. You could be fifth. At least you played the game,
Yeah, but it's funny. I'm gonna tell another old school story. When I was first backpacking around the world, I was traveling through Malaysia, and we ended up being on the same route with this Malaysian couple, and we hung out. I mean, not a Malaysian couple, a Dutch couple in Malaysia, and we actually went and stayed with them later in outside of Amsterdam. But anyway, we were traveling around with them, and it turned out they had 8 weeks paid vacation. And that just like blew my mind at the time because I had just come from the corporate world where you're lucky to have two. And even that, they make you feel guilty about it, you know? And I was like, 8 weeks vacation? What? Like, that is awesome. Like, how did you pull that off? And he's like, oh, I've just been there for, 5 or 6 years. You get six when you start out. And I was like, what? Like that just changed my whole outlook. And then I started asking other Europeans that we met, like, how much vacation do you get? And they're like, I don't know, 4 weeks, I guess, plus all the holidays. Like that was completely normal. I'm like, man, why are we working so hard? This is nuts.
It is a funny thing when you get outside your bubble and start figuring out that other people are living a different way, and at least considering like, maybe the way we've been building our mousetrap isn't the best way to build the mousetrap. And yeah, I think you can take the good and the bad from the situation. Like, I think I've benefited some from having a bit of that ingrained in me. And I've also benefited from being surrounded by people who say like, you can tone it down a little bit and you'll still be okay. And finding that happy medium is kind of where I am now. And I feel good with the balance.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize how important it is to get proper rest and to have time for your mind to breathe in order to be creative. I mean, people ask me, when do you sleep? When they look at how many things I'm running, my different websites and books and all. And like, I get 8 hours every night, like clockwork. Like I mean, if I'm, I got an early flight or whatever, things happen, and you're on buses and trains. But I mean, when I'm home, like I definitely get plenty of sleep. And I think that's so important because you got to recharge your brain and your body. And I just feel like if you're in any kind of creative profession, if you're just working constantly at your desk and not taking time to like just wander and daydream and, go on vacation, then you're not going to be very creative.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my wife is an artist by trade, and like, I'm not. Like, I have no artistic bone in my body. And so I recall like us having a conversation once about how, I was trying to apply some of the methodologies that I used with my work to like her, and saying like, you need to time box these things, or you need to kind of like assign a day for painting or whatever. And she was like, that doesn't work for a creative mind. Like I can't be like, oh, be creative on Tuesday at 4. Like it's just not how it happens. And I learned a valuable lesson there. Like, yeah, of course that applies to creatives, but it doesn't just apply to creatives. It applies to all of us in whatever walk of life we're in. Like you need the space to sit back and think and get out of the grind to be able to do like really impactful work. Like you can do stuff, you can tinker with things. You can be the guy that gets in at 6 a.m. and leaves at 8 p.m. and, grinds all the time. But like, are you ever really like creating something or allowing your mind to expand and do something a bit more meaningful? Like I think that's tough to achieve in that environment.
Yeah, and in the early days of Pixar, they would go to a cabin out in the woods and just like sit around tables and talk about ideas, no computers, no phones, because they knew they needed to like get away from all the distractions and be out in nature and yeah, have time for their brain to breathe. And there's a lesson in there, I think. And you've probably seen it, like when you go walking in the woods, you tend to have more ideas than when you're just sitting at your desk, and that's kind of natural. But also, it's funny. I've had that same argument with my wife. She's a personal trainer, and so she's ragging on me because of the physical aspect. She's like, "You need to get up every half hour or every 45 minutes." I'm like, "No way, man! I'm in the flow. Like I'm going to crank on this article till it's done. I'm not getting up." It's like I have to, when you're in the zone or the flow or whatever, you got to take full advantage of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of curious about this with you. You joked about this a minute ago, and you said like, people ask how you get some sleep, but I was literally going to ask you that question because when you look at your bio, like if I go to your website, which we'll link to in the show notes, like there's, I mean, multiple websites that you're running. There's multiple books that you've written. I imagine some other things you're working on, articles that you're contributing to and or writing. Like it does seem chaotic's not the right word, but it seems like my impression is like, dude, this guy must be like working nonstop, and or he's just got this like incredible system down. So I'm kind of curious, like, how do you manage all that stuff, and as part of that, like, still enjoy the work, because you seem like you enjoy your work, and it might be easy for someone to say like, yeah, of course, he's a travel writer. Like, that's awesome. You get to travel. That's your job. How luxurious. And I just feel like there's probably not some, it's not always as luxurious as it might seem to be, but then B, like, you have to have a really great like passion for the work, and also like systems and processes in place to make it happen. So like, just broadly speaking, like, how do you manage so much and continue to enjoy what you're doing?
Yeah, I do still enjoy it. I joke that I haven't dreaded a Monday since I went out on my own, which was 2006. That's when I just said goodbye for good to the corporate world. But yeah, it is an enjoyable job. But what people don't realize is behind the scenes, there's a lot of technical crap with running a blog that's no fun. And, you do have to deal with that stuff. Same with a podcast or anything else that's got, a technical aspect. Some people are always saying, "Oh, this is not what I signed up for." I didn't, I didn't, I didn't sign up to write code or figure out why my WordPress site is broken. But anyway, I do have good systems in place. That is a big part of it. I have some assistants that help me a lot. I've got an associated editor who works on two of my sites, and I have someone who does a lot of my social media, so I can just be social. I go on and, spout off now and then and talk about my personal stuff, but I don't do the day-to-day obligatory posts, so much on social. And then also I try to automate what I can. And, just I do some time blocking like you were talking about, but I think the main thing for me is I have 3 or 4 key things I want to get done every day. And I've got a really long to-do list, but those, 3 or 4 things, if they get done, then the business is going to move forward and everything's going to be fine. So, most of my blogs that I'm running, if I don't have help, I'm putting up 1 post a week. I have some group blogs where I'm just one of the writers. I'm the editor, but there's other contributors. So that helps a lot. It keeps content going up even when I'm not doing it myself. So yeah, things like that. When I'm doing a book, that's when it really gets hairy, because a book is a very long process. And so you kind of have to break it into chunks and steal some time here and there when you can to work on it. And that's when I really get, when I struggle a little bit with the time management. But for the day-to-day stuff, it's usually not too bad. And I try to take off every afternoon and take a walk or something, just to get out of the office. And when I'm traveling on vacation, I try not to do much work. It's hard to avoid at least checking your email, but as long as no disasters come up, I try to put the laptop away for a couple of days at least.
Nice. What are those, like, I want to give some context for people that may not know you. I mean, of course, again, all the links are going to be in the show notes and they can read the description, but just, if someone's just listening, like, what are some of these sites that you're running, and maybe 1 or 2 of the books that you've written, just to give a little bit of like color to the type of stuff that you're working on?
So my first blog I started in 2003 and it's still running. So it's probably one of the longest running blogs out there, at least single person ones. That's called the Cheapest Destinations blog. I still do that completely by myself. 1 new post a week, usually, sometimes more, but I've kind of just gotten into that pattern. And then after a few years, I started some other sites and just kind of rapid fire, started like 1 a year for a while, and then eventually sold one of them, which was about travel gear. But I started Perceptive Travel back in 2006, and that's all narrative stories from book authors. And then there is a blog attached to it also. But that's kind of more of a literary site, narrative travel writing. It does not make much money. It does not get a ton of traffic because Google doesn't know what to do with that kind of stuff. It's like it's not answering a question. It's telling a story, and they don't do well with stories. But anyway, it's kind of a labor of love. It wins lots of awards. It's kind of like an indie movie studio, But and then I actually have a luxury site, which is kind of funny. I run that one under a pen name, which are my first 2 names, Timothy Scott, because I've got all this budget travel stuff out there and I have books on it. And so it's called Luxury Latin America. And I run that one just because I just started to fill a hole in the market. Basically, nobody was writing about high-end travel in Latin America, and all these new nice hotels were opening up, and I was already traveling in that area a lot anyway. So that's the site that makes the most money, of course, because it's all luxury, and the advertisers have a lot more money to spend.
Instead of the $32 a night hostel, someone's buying a $300 a night hotel.
Exactly. The commissions on those hotels are a lot better. And then I have one that's kind of inside baseball. It's called travelwriting2.com. It goes with my Travel Writing 2.0 book. So I guess that's the segue. I have a book called Travel Writing 2.0 that's for, basically teaching people how to make some money at this game. And that's in its third edition. The World's Cheapest Destinations book, I started around this. I put out the first one in 2002, so it's now in its fifth edition. It's kind of a slow and steady seller because there's always people taking off to go backpacking around the world or whatever. And so that's kind of a shortcut that tells you all the best places to travel around the world that are a good value if you're on a budget. And then my best-selling one is called A Better Life for Half the Price, and that's about moving abroad. And my experience is in Mexico, of course, but I interviewed people from all the countries that are featured. So there's quite a few in Europe, quite a few in Asia, South America. I think there's 19 or 20 in the book. And so the first section of it is basically, is this life right for you? Are you the right kind of person who is going to thrive in a foreign country? And then a lot of, nitty gritty stuff about banking and insurance and healthcare and all that kind of stuff. And then it gets into individual country rundowns with both the pros and cons. I try to not shy away from the negatives because I don't want to be a rah-rah cheerleader that's going to tell everybody everything's wonderful in Ecuador when there are challenges for moving to Ecuador, just as there are challenges in your home country. So I try to lay all those out so people can understand what they're up against.
I think it's good to paint both sides of the coin there because I am one of those people that moved to Ecuador with big rose-colored glasses on and got smacked in the face like first week there with some things that just didn't even cross my mind that this could be a thing. That one of those things, for example, was like the president of the country just decided to double overnight, like 100% increase on import taxes. And we were running a business that required importing some materials and our margins just got completely destroyed. So like, that kind of thing, like that just wouldn't happen back home. And anyway, there are challenges everywhere, but I think like at the time I recall going and just being like, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to live on $1,000 a month. I'm going to live like a king. I'm going to get to travel Latin America. I'm going to be, splitting my time, couple days of work, couple days in Easter Island and Patagonia and like, then you learn a lot of stuff really quickly. None of that ended up being true. So great experience. But like, yeah, I think like there's so much content out there that just says how awesome this lifestyle is and not enough that just says like, yes, it can be cool, but like understand the bumps in the road as well.
Yeah. And I think it's important no matter what source you're looking at to try to see if there's a conflict of interest there or an angle, that they've got going, a business that they're really trying to funnel you to. And some of those living abroad ones are relentless about that. They're running seminars, they're doing these camps, they're trying to get you to subscribe to the premium version that's $500 and their webinars and all this stuff. I do very little of that. I mean, I have a package that has consulting calls built in if somebody wants to, actually go over all their issues with me personally, but I'm not trying to funnel people into anything. I don't have any arrangement with real estate brokerages or anything like that. I just am trying to lay it all out and let people decide.
Nice. I appreciate the approach as someone who's probably tried to follow some of the organizations that you're referencing there and made some of those mistakes along the way. So I think, something
for some of them, it's just the thing you're subscribing to or that you're reading is only like the top of the funnel, to use the marketing speak. It's just, they're just trying to get you in the door so they can get you to spend a lot of money. Kind of like Scientology, but a whole different. Sorry, my mother-in-law lives in Tampa Bay, and so downtown Clearwater is the Scientology headquarters, and I can't resist taking a poke at them.
That was a funny thing. I spent a month living in Clearwater Beach but therefore spent enough time in Clearwater, the town, and that was a shock to me. I had no idea that that was the case, and I learned a little bit about Scientology that month, we'll say. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you in partnership with my friends over at Lamont & Co. If you're planning a retreat, offsite, or group gathering of any kind this year, I highly suggest tapping into their extensive knowledge and experience to help you find the best possible venue for your event. I work with Kim, who has become my trusted advisor when it comes to planning any event around the world, and she's literally saved me hundreds of hours of work and has located venues I never would have found on my own. She even provides me with budget breakdowns and cost estimates for each location I'm interested in and negotiates contract terms on my behalf, all for free. If it sounds too good to be true, I thought the exact same thing at first, but I can assure you this is the real deal. Lamont is paid by the venues, not by you, so there's no cost, risk, or obligation here. So do yourself a favor and contact Lamont via the link in the show notes when you're planning your next group, retreat, offsite, or gathering. Before we dive back into the rest of the interview, I have a small favor to ask of the audience. If you are enjoying this episode and getting some value out of it, then please follow these very simple instructions. Step 1, pick up your phone. I'll give you a second. Step 2, leave a 5-star review for About Abroad. That's it. That's all I'm asking. It takes about 2 seconds. Of course, it is completely free to you, and it is the best possible way to support myself, the show, and everyone working on About Abroad behind the scenes. The funny thing is that there are thousands of people tuning in to this show every single week, but we are very likely to only get a few reviews by industry standards, and reviews are the most impactful way that you can show support for the show. So if you have the time, please do so. And either way, I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Okay, now back to the episode. You've been at the travel writing game for a while now, and you've seen a lot of changes. And I feel like these days, like I see, people are popping up all the time because there's so much access with social media, and just like the acceleration of access to the internet and everything. Like anybody can start writing a blog at any time, or go out and start taking some videos of their travels and start identifying themselves as a travel writer. So not to disparage somebody doing that, I'm more so interested in like your perspective of like that kind of like access and transition, like how things have changed since the beginning of your time as a travel writer to like what you're seeing these days. And maybe along with that, like any advice to the person listening to this right now that kind of wants to follow in your footsteps.
Sure. There are two sides of that coin. As always, there's negatives and positives, but I think overall it's positive that it's so much easier to avoid the gatekeepers now. When I first started travel writing, I wrote for magazines and newspapers because that was all you could do when you were a travel writer. You basically had to get somebody to say yes to your idea or it didn't get published. And so I like that it's so much more democratic now. I don't think it's necessarily a meritocracy because, if you're good at SEO or you look great in a bikini, you're going to do better than someone who is not good at SEO and looks terrible in a bathing suit. But apart from that, though, I think it's good that if somebody has an idea or they want to write about their travels, they can get it out there and nobody's going to stop them. Or if they want to start a YouTube channel and, document everything they're doing with their camera, the tools are so cheap and readily available now that anybody can do that. And I think it's kind of cool that, you don't have to have a journalism degree. You don't have to work your way up through the ranks, querying editors for years before you get a break and you can do a feature. You can write a feature story now, 5,000 words on your blog if you want, and nobody can tell you no. So I think those are all a beautiful thing. And I think it's also a beautiful thing that Amazon came along and allowed everybody to publish their book. I mean, it means there's a lot of crap out there, sure, but it also means that you can get a book out a lot faster without having to go through the 2-year traditional publishing route, and you don't have to settle for 10% royalty. You get to keep most of what is spent on the book, especially for Kindle books. So I think all that's very, very positive. The downside of it is, besides there being a fair bit of crap you have to wade through, is that it's super competitive now because you can actually make money at this pursuit. Whereas When I started, you only made money if an editor paid you. And then when the internet started, there just weren't many ways to advertise. Like when my blog first started, there was no AdSense, there were no affiliate programs, none of that stuff existed. And then slowly but surely they all came along. And now we've got these ad networks that you just have to put one piece of code on your site. And if you're getting enough traffic, you can make, a pretty decent amount of money from that, enough to pay your rent. So, or if you're traveling, to pay your travel expenses if you're in cheap countries. So I think all that's very positive, but yeah, it is a lot more competitive. I mean, when I first started my blog, I knew all the other budget travel bloggers because there weren't that many of us, but now there's thousands of them. So you got to be better than the rest, or be more original, or find a good niche that hasn't been done to death. So you have to get a lot more specific now. It's very hard to be a generalist travel writer. And so that's my main piece of advice. Find something that you're super interested in, that you know a lot about, know more than most people, or you're willing to learn more than most people, and kind of become a specialist, because it's very hard to be a generalist now and make money at it unless you've already been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, I heard a prominent food blogger told me recently, like, if he was becoming a food blogger again, he's like, I couldn't just be a food blogger. He's like, you have to niche down into like, a very specific part of food and travel. And
yeah, you're the gluten-free baking blog.
Yes, exactly. And then you'll have your following. And so, yeah, I do think that's kind of fascinating. Like with access and opportunity comes excessive competition, excessive crap to wade through. And then, you find the one that you match with the content you want to consume.
What's interesting though, around 2020, 2021, there was a big drop off there for a while. Like a lot of people left that used to be bloggers, or especially Instagram influencers. Like, they just got wiped out because that money just was not there anymore, to get you to go pose in front of things. Like nobody was paying out for that because nobody could travel. So we all kind of had to pivot for a while and find a way to survive. But a lot of people didn't want to deal with that, or couldn't deal with that because they had bills to pay. So they went and got a real job or something, But now I think you've got a whole nother wave of people getting into it, because all that's in the rearview mirror now, hopefully permanently. So times are good again, and people are traveling. A lot of destinations are setting new records again and talking about over tourism again. So travel's back in full force.
Oh yeah, it is, man. It is. There's no shortage of it. At least sitting over here in Europe, like this past summer was nuts. I mean, just people were, all the locals talking about. It was funny. It was like this bell curve where it was, oh, we can't wait for the tourists to come back. Our economy's struggling. We need the you talk to the local shop owner or whatever, and that's the narrative. And then it's like 1 year later, it's like, these damn tourists, man, there's so many of them. They're driving us crazy. When is the summer going to be over? And you're like, man, it's a little bit different tune than a year ago.
Yeah, it went from famine to gluttony, I guess.
Yeah, it did. Is there anywhere what's on your bucket list? Like you've seen a lot of the world, but any places you haven't been to, or places you really want to get back to?
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking before you hit the record button that you're in the Dolomites in Italy, and I do want to get to that area. I love the mountains. I mean, I have fun at the beach and everything, but as far as inspiring landscapes, I really love high mountain places. So I've been to Peru a bunch of times, and Nepal, and to the Alps, and I like those places. But I've not been to New Zealand. So that's on my list, because another mountain country that's beautiful, and it's just so darn far that if I go there, I want to go for a few weeks or a month. I don't want to just like do a short vacation there. And while I'm there, I might as well hop over to Australia. And they used to sell those Circle the Pacific tickets. I'm sure there's agencies you can still buy them from that will take you to Hawaii and Fiji and Australia and New Zealand. So maybe I'll do something like that.
Cool. I would love to do that.
Yeah,
I never heard of that before.
And there's a few places I haven't been to in the Americas, but not a lot. Actually, I've been to a lot of them, but there's a few I would still like to get to that I haven't spent much time in. But I'm not a country counter. Like, I'm not doing it for that sake. I'm doing it because there are certain experiences I want. Like, I'm not wanting to go to New Zealand because I haven't been there so I can check it off my list. I just really do want to go there and experience it. But there's other places, like if I never make it to Paraguay or El Salvador, it probably won't be the end of the world in my bucket list book.
Yeah, I hear you. I actually find with myself, it's like I'm not a country counter either. So, but if people ask me that, I'm like, I can't tell you how many countries I've been to off the top of my head. But what I really love is like going back to countries that I really enjoyed and just experiencing more of them. And so it's kind of like one of those things that, like, as I see more, my bucket list just kind of grows longer because it's like, Spain, for example, like I wanted to go to Spain. Okay, cool. I did like Madrid and Barcelona, and I was like, yeah, but I heard about this place, Sevilla and Valencia. Oh, and then I got to see those, and I was like, but have you guys heard about Cantabria and Galicia in the north? Like, that's a totally different vibe. I'm like, oh, okay, damn, I got to go see that now. And so like I would end up, I ended up moving to Spain for 4 years and like really exploring the Iberian Peninsula but like I didn't really get out of, that kind of zone of the world very much, but I was seeing and experiencing a lot. And so I don't know, that's kind of what's calling to me these days is going deeper on the places that I know I already like and where it's like comfortable and convenient to go to. I think there is a part of me that's like not feeling the super adventurous long journeys as much, but like there's plenty right out my back door that seems exciting to explore.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's enough in Spain and Portugal that you could definitely travel around there for a year or two and still miss a lot. And I feel like a lot of countries are like that. And I am starting to think I should count up how many Mexican states I've been to because I think I only have maybe 6 or 7 left. So maybe that would be a worthwhile exercise because I could, cover the whole map. But it's because there's a lot to see and do in Mexico. And every time I get a chance, I try to go strike out and explore a different area. But at the same time, there's a bunch of places I've been back to over and over again because, I do want to get more depth in them. And so that's why, I've been to Peru and Argentina and a few other places in South America several times. And I feel like I could definitely go back because there's other spots I still haven't been to that I see a picture on Facebook or Instagram. I'll go, wow, I didn't know about that place. It's like, even though I've been there to that country plenty of times, I didn't know that corner of it even existed. And so, I think that's the dilemma we travelers have. It's, it's an endless list of places you'd like to go.
Absolutely, man. I think, Mexico is a great example of that because everybody's got like a stereotypical picture in their mind of what Mexico is. And it probably involves like beaches and spring break. And, maybe Mexico City enters the mind for the average person. But like, as you said, you're living in this town that I bet a lot of people listening haven't heard of. And even if they have, like, they couldn't tell you a ton about it, but it's, it's in the mountains and it's got a colonial feel to it in the center, as you said. Like I don't know, there's a lot to explore. It's a massive country land wise and like so diverse beyond what people generally tend to think. At least that's my perception. I don't know if, you living there, you might see it a little bit different. I'd be curious to hear.
No, I think that's true. And to add to that, just for the beaches, I think there's couple thousand miles of coast or something like that. So there are some really epic beaches that you can go to in Mexico that nobody's on them. I mean, it's literally just you walking down the beach, which I go to those places and I go, I can't believe this even exists. There's no resort here. Like, there might be some shack with, beers on ice and that's about it. And I love that those places still exist and they're still out there. But everybody goes to Cancun, which is like wall-to-wall hotels and it's packed and Puerto Vallarta, which I have a great time when I'm in Puerto Vallarta, but the beaches near the city aren't that great, but if you go an hour or two away, they're amazing. And so I would just encourage people to like get off the beaten path, learn some Spanish and, traveler phrase book Spanish and get off the beaten path a little bit and rent a car now and then and just go explore.
Yeah, man. Do you have a hidden gem is somewhere in Mexico that you kind of like send friends and family to, or that you'd recommend people go once they've done the top of the list, the Mexico hit list, for example? Like, do you have something like that in mind?
Well, there are two areas I would advise people to check out. One of them's fairly well known, the coast of Oaxaca. So the best known beach there is Puerto Escondido and maybe Huatulco. But there's all these little beaches in between, like Mazunte and Zipolite and some others along there. They're not completely empty, but they're pretty low key, like inexpensive hotels, no huge resorts, and I love those places. And I think the west coast of Mexico is a lot more interesting because, again, you got mountains. It's not just completely flat like the Caribbean. And you got big waves, and it's just you can go boogie boarding or surfing or whatever. And the other area is called Costa Alegre, which is south of Puerto Vallarta, and it's this huge, like 4 hour long stretch of land where there's a few really expensive resorts dotted along it, but otherwise there's a whole lot of nothing. And so if you can find your way down a rutted road to one of those beaches, you get there and you're like, oh my God, like this is something I thought didn't exist anymore. And it's just empty and beautiful. And so, yeah, those two areas I would suggest people check out if they're wanting to be a little more intrepid.
Nice. While we're on the subject of Mexico again, real quick, I want to, for the person that's listening and is like, I kind of want to follow in Tim's footsteps and move to Mexico. Like, are there, I'm thinking very broadly here, like, are there a couple bullet points you would point people to, and some things that are rolling through my mind here are like, I think, people are going to be attracted to the pros. So they've already kind of got that in their mind. But I mean, are there any like big downsides that you've discovered, and, or like from a visa standpoint that you can kind of point people to, like, yeah, it's pretty easy, you're just going to need to do A, B, and C, or like, no, be prepared, like this is a process. Generally speaking, anything in that area that you could recommend?
Yeah, let's start with visas because that's gotten a little more daunting income wise. If anybody wants the exact numbers, just go to my cheapest destinations blog and search Mexican residency or residency in Mexico or whatever, because I just updated it for this year. Um, Basically, the income requirements to get residency in Mexico are tied to the minimum wage in Mexico, and it's a formula. It's like 300 times the minimum wage is what you need to be making as a foreigner in order to get residency. You don't need that much to live on. Like, frankly, we live on half that and we live pretty well. So, but you have to show that. So right now it's more than $4,100 because it's partly because of that minimum wage going up twice in 2 years, but it's also because the dollar has weakened a bit against the Mexican peso. So it's 17 to the dollar right now, roughly. So, that impacts how much you have to show in dollars. There's two ways around that, though. One is you can, if you have enough savings, you can show that instead, and I think that's 72,000 or something like that. And retirement funds do qualify. So if you've got an IRA or a 401k or something, you can show them that even if your income isn't high enough, and that will get you in. Once you get approved in the U.S., then it's pretty straightforward. You have to pay a little bit of money, like a couple $100, and then you come down to Mexico, and within 30 days of arriving, you have to go to the consulate or the embassy or immigration office, rather. You go to the consulate or embassy in U.S., you go to the immigration office in Mexico, and they have to take your fingerprints, and you have to pay more money, and you have to get your passport stamped and get this little card, identity card, and all this stuff. But it's mostly a formality. I mean, if you're approved in the U.S., you're done in Mexico, and then that gets you temporary residency, which you can renew every year, and then after the fourth year, you can get permanent residency. So that's basically how it works for 95% of people. There is a way to go straight to permanent if you can show enough income and you're old enough, but that's a whole nother story. It is covered in that blog post of mine, though, if you're interested in that. So that's the one way to get around it, is the savings part. The other way around it is just stay on a tourist visa, and Mexico gives you 180 days when you come into the country. So I'd say probably half the foreigners in Mexico, maybe more, are only coming down for 6 months. They're snowbirds, 6 months or less. So for them, it doesn't matter. They just come in on a tourist visa. They stay for 4, 5, 6 months, then they go back home. So they're Canadians, especially, they're kind of getting the best of both worlds. They get the nice weather in Canada and they get the nice weather in Mexico, and they just go back and forth every year. But if you want to stay here permanently, you would just have to go leave every 6 months, which is not that bad. If you live somewhere like Thailand, you got to leave every month or two. If you live in Bali, it is every month that you got to fly somewhere, which is a royal pain. You got to fly to Malaysia, turn around and come back so you can get a new stamp. But 180 days is pretty easy. Just take a vacation. you know,
Yeah. I mean, so is it really that easy? You just leave and come back. It's not like you need to be out for a 90, like in Europe, it's, in 90 days, out 90 days. It's not like that in Mexico.
No, I mean, technically you could turn around and do it the same day, although I wouldn't advise that, just for suspicion's sake. It's probably better to go out for a little while and then come back. But, there's so many people crossing the border back and forth between the U.S. and Mexico on all along that border that you could just go do that. You could fly to Tijuana, cross the bridge and come back. But yeah, I think it's better if you spend a little time out, take a vacation. You can go down to Guatemala and come back. That's cheap and easy. Mexico has a lot of cheap flights to other countries because there's a bunch of budget airlines here, so it won't cost you much. But yeah, you could do that indefinitely, in theory, although, after a while, they might start looking at you funny if you're doing that for years on end. Um, but yeah, it's pretty easy. Like you mentioned the Schengen zone in Europe, like that's a pain. You can only stay 90 days within 180 or something like that. And Peru's kind of the same way for a year. Like you can stay for 6 months if you extend your visa, but then you can't come back for another 6 months. But Mexico's pretty easy. If you've got money to spend, they're happy to have you.
That's the name of the game. We can just acknowledge that, and it's fine. I like that they make it easy, honestly, because I feel like we're going to be there spending money. You're going to get your tax dollars in that way, so might as well let us come.
Yeah, and a lot of countries are catching on to that. I mean, there have been a lot of digital nomad visas launched in the last couple of years, basically ever since this remote work trend started. But a lot of them are not very useful for people that are doing what we do and working for ourselves. Like they want you to show pay stubs and like get a letter from your employer. It's like I'd say probably 80% of nomads, maybe 90% are not working for someone specifically. They're contractors, freelancers, they own their own business, whatever.
No, there's a lot of them that haven't figured it out yet. I mean, there's some good ones out there, but some of them make it so cumbersome and bureaucratic that it's not even worth it, and or you have to earn like an exorbitant amount of money to be able to qualify. So it's just like automatically rules out a huge portion of the demographic that would otherwise consider coming. So I don't know. It would be interesting.
And then some
of
them you have to start paying taxes after 6 months locally, which kind of defeats the purpose also. So,
yeah. And people don't want to deal with that, like they're like, I'll just go somewhere else where that's not, I mean, not even just for the monetary aspect, just like, I'm not going to come somewhere for a year and deal with, my home tax situation, this tax situation. Like it's just, there's other countries that don't require that. So I'm just going to go there. Like, I can't tell you how many nomad types I've talked to that just said exactly that. Like, I'm not using that nomad visa. There's no need.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you're just thinking about this right now, anybody listening, and you want to set off around the world, the ideal thing is just to stay in places 3 months or less, or in the case of Mexico, 6 months or less, and then move on. It makes your life a lot easier. And if you stay out of the U.S. for more than 330 days, I think it is, then you basically get an exemption up to far more money than you're probably making on your taxes. Like it's, I don't know, $100,000 or something like that. So basically you still have to pay Social Security if you're self-employed, but everything else you kind of get exempt from tax wise. So it does pay to just stay out of the country and keep moving if you're up for that.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that have made a good life off the foreign earned income tax exclusion, and pairing that with remote work, it can be a pretty satisfactory life financially. Like some people think like, oh, this lifestyle is going to cost me a lot, but if you read books like yours about the cheapest destinations and get some tax breaks along the way, you could actually be putting some money in your pocket and actually like experiencing more of the world and traveling more than you ever could have dreamed. And that's not like a pipe dream. Like that's very much so reality for a lot of people.
For sure. I would say if you're a single person, there's dozens of countries around the world where you can easily live on $1,500 to $2,000 in a month. And that's not scraping by, that's not living in crappy hostels or anything. That's like renting a decent apartment and eating well and, all those kinds of things, traveling a fair bit. So just imagine if you're making 4 or 5 grand a month in your work, then you're going to be living the good life and putting some away.
Yeah. Okay. So this might be a good place for us to wrap this up. I know I have to get you back to your real life, and I really appreciate all your time here, but I did want to get to this, and you give me a nice segue there. So, you've written a book about the cheapest travel destinations in the world. Without giving away the whole book, like, are there 2 or 3 that you kind of like off the top of your head recommend people traveling on a budget focus in on?
Yeah, sure. And it's a little different traveling than it is if you're going to live somewhere, because the considerations are different. But there is a whole lot of overlap. Like if it's a Venn diagram, a bunch of it overlaps. The cheapest places to travel are also in a lot of ways the cheapest places to live. It's just some are better suited for putting down roots than others. But I think the best way to think of it is in clusters, because then you can travel overland and visit multiple countries without breaking the bank. And so just the most obvious cluster is Southeast Asia. That's where a lot of backpackers head first, or it's where they spend a lot of their time, because you've got all these countries clumped together that you can visit without even getting back on a plane. Or if you do want to get on a plane, they're all connected by AirAsia and these other budget airlines, so it's quite cheap to move around. So we're talking like Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, maybe the Philippines if you feel like hopping over there. So all of those you could travel around quite reasonably. The only expensive one in there is Singapore, really. So maybe just limit your time in Singapore to a couple nights, and then the rest of them you can just live the good life and travel well and eat well and stay healthy if you want. And there's just so much to see and do in that area. The other cluster, I'm going to name 4 of them. So there's one in Europe that would be, I guess there's 2 clusters there, basically the Balkans and Eastern Europe, what we call Eastern Europe. It's not really accurate, but just think of it more like the former Iron Curtain countries. So the Balkans would be like Bosnia, Montenegro, not Croatia, that's more expensive, Bulgaria, that whole area. And even Greece is not so bad. I would say Greece is cheaper than Croatia these days. But anyway, those Balkan countries are quite reasonable. There's some awesome beaches in Albania that look just like Greece, but at half the price. And so that's a cluster to consider. And then the Iron Curtain countries are like Slovakia, Hungary. Well, Bulgaria was communist, but they're more, off to the edge. Romania, the Czech Republic's not too bad if you avoid Prague. So you could travel around that whole area, quite reasonably. And then Central America would be another one, except Belize and Costa Rica. Those 2 are both awesome places. I've been to them several times, but you're going there more on a vacation budget than a backpacker budget. But the other ones are quite reasonable. And then if you head down to South America, the cluster would be like Colombia these days, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. Those are kind of the bargain price ones. But now Argentina also. I don't know if it's going to last. They tend to lurch from crisis to fixes to crisis, and right now they're in crisis mode. But I have noticed that the free fall in their exchange rate has leveled off. It's been around 1,000 for a couple of months now. So maybe this wacky new president has had an effect on the market, and because he's talking about dollarizing the economy. And if they ever did that, then it would be like Ecuador and Panama, where they're using the dollar as their currency. But for now, anyway, Argentina is probably the best value in the world in terms of food and drink and a lot of other aspects.
Yeah, it's one of those destinations that's buzzing. I mean, it's never been a country that needed any pumping up in terms of being an awesome destination to go to. There's always going to be people traveling there, but the last year or so, I feel like it's like one of those top few. Maybe I feel like Croatia was this way like 7-8 years ago. Is like everybody's talking about how Croatia is the new place, and as you said, now like I was just there this past summer. It was like, this is not cheap anymore. Like this is it's actually like super expensive. And so anyway, like Argentina kind of seems to be that place now. I don't know what the future holds, but I hear tons of people talking about going to Argentina. And it's also really easy for us, for example, as Americans to travel there and stay like for long periods of time. So that's a pretty cool bonus as well.
I've heard from several people that if you overstay your visa in Argentina, no matter how long, it's like $25 you have to pay as a penalty when you leave. They don't really care too much. And just so people don't call me racist, there are some places in Africa that are cheap, but for the most part, the continent is not. And that's because it's just not very well set up for backpackers unless you're at the very top in Egypt and Morocco, Tunisia maybe, or if you go to the very bottom and you go to South Africa. Otherwise, like it's just not easy to get around as a pedestrian and find cheap places to stay that you can walk to. They're not that good and they're overpriced. And so, there's a whole nother long story that we could talk about for an hour of why it is the case. But just realize that if you're going to Africa, it's not going to be as cheap as you probably think it is.
That's good. That's good perspective though, because I'm not trying to equate all of Africa to Argentina, but along with that same conversation, there's a lot of buzz in the air about, Africa kind of being in general, like a destination that that you hear a lot of maybe seasoned nomads and travelers like wanting to kind of venture in and travel around Africa more. And so I think some people are pumping that up saying like, look, you can go, it's cheap and you can travel and see all the stuff. And I agree, there's a ton to see, but I've wondered about the cheap part. I don't have perspective, so I couldn't say. So interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah. And it's just the hassle to get around because part of that's just geography. It's a massive continent. Like people don't realize how big it is. You can fit a couple of USAs into it. It's a long way to travel across from one country to the other. And then you got, wars and border hassles and all those other things in the mix. But going from overland from one country to another is not an easy thing. It's better to go there when you're a seasoned traveler. That's for sure.
Nice. Well, I think that's amazing perspective and also like a lot of really good stuff touched on here today. So I don't want to keep you too much longer though. I would love if you had the time to have another hour to talk about that, but I'll let you go. And again, just want to thank you for the time and all the thoughts and stuff shared here today. This was awesome. We talked about some of your work already and we want to place those links in the show notes. So where should people to go to learn more about you? Any of the books or websites that you're running, anything you want us to place there, mention them now, and then we'll drop them in the show notes.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Chase. It was good to talk. It's always fun to talk about travel and chat about where we want to go next. But my books are all on Amazon, among other places. So you can just search my name there. It's Tim Leffel, and I think I'm the only one, Leffel. So that's easy. My oldest running blog, like I said, is the Cheapest Destinations blog. But otherwise, you can just go to my portfolio site, which is my name, timleffel.com. And that links out to everything. It links to the books, to the websites I run. It links to freelance articles I've done, all kinds of stuff. So although that site is not monetized, that's where I send people because it's like the portal to everything else.
The Tim Leffel portal will be, the link to that will be in the show notes. Go check him out.
If I could plug one more thing, I mentioned it briefly, but I run a weekly newsletter called Nomadico, and it's just 4 quick bites for working travelers. So if that's you or you're aspiring to be in that boat, sign up for that. It's on Substack. It's nomadico.substack.com, or you can just Google it. But it's a mix of what's going on in the nomad world in terms of news and also recommendations for like things that make your life easier when you're traveling.
Perfect. Yeah, that's like a quick digest kind of thing too. Like you should be able to consume it very quickly, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's just meant to be something you can read in a few minutes and then move on to your workday.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we will have the link to that in the show notes as well. And I hope the About Abroad audience will be checking out some Tim Leffel work here soon. I've been following along for a long time, so this is super awesome for me to have you on the show. And again, appreciate it, and all that you contributed to those of us who were wanting to start traveling a long time ago, but didn't think it was possible to do as a grown up. You taught us that we could.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And also just a bit of encouragement for everybody. I started in my late 20s and now I'm much, much older and I'm still doing it. So when you go on your around the world trip, don't feel like you got to check everything off the box. There will be more trips.
That's good advice. Yeah, as we said today, like the bucket list keeps growing. The more you see, the more you want to see. So it will never be empty. That's for sure. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks. Talk to you later, Chase.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.